Ever been trapped in the friend zone, thinking she sees you as just a buddy, only to notice little things that don't add up? The late night texts, the laughter that lingers longer than it should, the way she lights up when you enter the room. These aren't accidents. She might call you just a friend, but her actions are quietly exposing the truth she isn't ready to admit. Today, we're breaking down the 3 undeniable signs that prove she feels far more than friendship, and why most men completely miss them. Sign 1. The safe label versus the emotional pull. When she calls you just a friend, most men hear a verdict. They hear a closed door, a final decision, a polite rejection dressed up as friendliness. But Alpha Truths demands a different lens. Labels are not true. Labels are tools, and just a friend is one of the safest tools a woman can use when her emotions haven't settled into a single direction. It's a verbal shield, not always a factual statement. The mistake is believing the label more than the behavior that follows it. The safe label exists because attraction creates vulnerability. When emotional tension begins to form, it puts her in a position where she risks judgment, rejection, or loss of control. Calling you just a friend allows her to slow the pace without cutting the connection. It lets her keep you close while avoiding accountability for deeper feelings. This is not manipulation in a cartoonish sense. It's emotional self-preservation. Humans protect what they don't fully understand yet, and attraction is often confusing before it becomes conscious. What exposes the truth is the emotional pull that contradicts the label. If you were truly just a friend, your presence would be optional, replaceable, and emotionally neutral. Friendship does not create tension. Friendship does not change her tone, her energy, or her priorities. Real platonic connections are calm and predictable. But when the safe label is being used, the connection feels charged. Conversations linger longer than they need to. Silence between messages feels heavier than it should. Your absence creates a noticeable shift in her mood. These are not the traits of a neutral bond. These are signs of emotional gravity. Alpha Truths teaches that attraction leaks before it speaks. People can lie with words, but they cannot fully control emotional responses. The nervous system reacts before the mouth forms a sentence. When she says you're just a friend but reacts strongly to your attention, your withdrawal, or your approval, that reaction is the truth breaking through the mask. Emotional pull reveals itself in subtle urgency. She may downplay your importance verbally, yet seek reassurance indirectly. She may avoid defining the connection while making sure it doesn't drift away. Another key indicator of the safe label is inconsistency. Her words remain fixed, but her behavior fluctuates. One day she treats you casually, almost distant. Another day she opens up emotionally, shares personal thoughts, or seeks comfort in moments of stress. That swing doesn't come from friendship. It comes from unresolved attraction colliding with fear. When emotions rise, she leans in. When awareness catches up, she retreats behind the label. This push and pull is not accidental. It's the tension between what she feels and what she's ready to admit. The emotional pull also shows itself in how she frames you compared to others. Even while calling you a friend, she treats your opinion with unusual weight. Your validation matters more than it should. A joke from you lands differently than the same joke from someone else. Your disapproval carries more impact. Friendship does not create emotional leverage. Attraction does. When your presence influences her emotional state disproportionately, the label loses credibility. Alpha Truths isn't about assuming every friendly woman is secretly attracted. It's about understanding patterns. The safe label becomes suspicious only when paired with emotional investment. When she remembers small details about you but claims there's nothing there. When she seeks your attention during vulnerable moments but distances herself when things feel too close. When she positions you as emotionally significant while verbally minimizing the connection. These contradictions are not accidents. They are tells. The reason the safe label is so common is because it buys time. It allows her to explore the emotional pull without committing to its consequences. If things deepen, she can later say the feelings just happened. If things fade, she can claim it was always just friendship. Either way, the label protects her from responsibility while she gathers emotional information. This is why arguing against the label never works. Trying to convince her with words only pushes her deeper into it. Alpha Truths understands that attraction does not respond to persuasion. It responds to polarity and presence. What matters is not correcting the label, but removing the need for it. When you stop reacting to the words and instead anchor yourself in consistent, grounded behavior, the emotional pull becomes harder for her to deny. The label exists because she feels uncertain or cautious. Certainty is attractive. Emotional stability is attractive. A man who doesn't flinch at the label, doesn't seek reassurance, and doesn't overinvest emotionally creates a different dynamic. He lets the truth surface on its own. The emotional pull also reveals itself through attention economics. Time and energy are currency. When she allocates them to you disproportionately, despite calling you a friend, that allocation exposes priority. Friendship spreads attention evenly. Attraction concentrates it. If she makes time for you when she's busy, checks in without a clear reason, or keeps the connection active even when there's no practical need, the pull is real. Words are cheap. Time is expensive. Alpha Truths ultimately teaches one core principle here. Never debate words when behavior tells a different story. The safe label is often a placeholder, not a conclusion. It signals hesitation, not absence of feeling. The emotional pull is the evidence. When you learn to read that pull instead of reacting to the label, you stop playing defense and start observing from a position of clarity and control. Sign 2. Inconsistent boundaries and selective closeness. When a woman truly sees you as just a friend, the boundaries are clear, stable, and predictable. There is no confusion about where you stand because her behavior aligns naturally with the label. Alpha Truths begins by recognizing that confusion itself is data. Mixed signals don't appear out of nowhere. They are created when attraction exists but is being consciously or subconsciously managed. Inconsistent boundaries are not random. They are the result of desire colliding with caution. Selective closeness is the first crack in the just a friend narrative. She may insist on keeping things casual on the surface, yet allow moments of intimacy that don't belong in a purely platonic connection. These moments aren't always physical. More often, they are emotional. She opens up about fears she doesn't share widely. She talks about her past, her insecurities, or her private thoughts late at night. Friendship allows sharing, but it doesn't usually involve emotional exclusivity. When you become the chosen outlet for vulnerability, the boundary has already shifted. Alpha Truths emphasizes that boundaries reflect intent, not words. When her actions violate the very limits she claims to hold, that violation reveals internal conflict. One day she maintains distance, keeping conversations light and surface level. The next day she leans in emotionally, seeking reassurance, comfort, or validation. This fluctuation isn't accidental. It's her attempting to regulate how close things feel without severing the connection. The inconsistency is the signal. Stable friendship doesn't require emotional regulation. Attraction does. Another form of inconsistent boundaries shows up in how she responds to attention. At times, she may encourage it subtly, rewarding your presence with warmth, laughter, and engagement. At other times, she pulls back, reminding you verbally or through tone that you're just a friend. This push-pull dynamic isn't about confusion on your part, it's about conflict on hers. The closeness feels good, but acknowledging it feels risky. So she oscillates between allowing and restricting access. Selective closeness also appears in context. She may seek you out in private settings but keep the dynamic restrained in public. One-on-one, she relaxes, opens up, and connects deeply. Around others, she reinforces the friendship label, creating emotional distance. Alpha Truths reads this as compartmentalization. She separates environments to manage perception and emotion simultaneously. If the connection were truly platonic, there would be no need for such contrast. Consistency wouldn't threaten anything. The key here is that boundaries aren't being crossed randomly. They're being crossed selectively. She chooses when closeness is allowed and when it isn't. This control allows her to enjoy emotional intimacy without fully stepping into accountability. She gets the benefits of attraction without the vulnerability of admitting it. That selective access is not friendship. Friendship doesn't require strategic closeness. It doesn't need timing or emotional choreography. Alpha Truths also points to how she reacts when boundaries are mirrored. When you pull back slightly, matching the just a friend frame, her reaction becomes revealing. If she were comfortable with purely platonic boundaries, your distance wouldn't register emotionally. But when attraction exists, your withdrawal creates tension. She may increase contact, seek reassurance, or subtly test whether she still has access to you. Inconsistent boundaries become more visible when the dynamic is no longer being driven solely by her comfort. Another layer of selective closeness appears in crisis moments. When she's stressed, overwhelmed, or emotionally unsettled, she gravitates toward you. She wants your presence, your attention, your grounding energy. Once the emotional storm passes, she may reassert the friendship label, restoring distance. Alpha Truths recognizes this as emotional reliance. Friendship can offer support, but attraction creates dependency on a specific person's emotional state. When you become that person, boundaries blur. The reason inconsistent boundaries are so revealing is because they require effort. Maintaining a purely platonic connection is easy. It flows naturally without internal negotiation. Managing attraction, on the other hand, takes constant adjustment. She has to monitor how close she feels, how it might look, and what it could lead to. That monitoring produces inconsistency. One step forward, one step back. Lean in, then retreat. Warmth followed by distance. These patterns are not signs of disinterest. They are signs of restraint. Alpha Truths teaches that men often misinterpret these signals by overcompensating. They try to clarify, define, or force certainty. That approach backfires because it increases pressure. Pressure strengthens her need for boundaries, not her desire to dissolve them. The more you push for verbal clarity, the more she hides behind the label. The truth of attraction doesn't emerge under interrogation. It emerges when tension is allowed to exist without being chased. Selective closeness also shows up in how she treats other men around you. She may casually mention them, yet subtly monitor your reaction. She may downplay their importance while emphasizing her connection with you. This is not accidental conversation. It's emotional calibration. She's testing where she stands with you while maintaining plausible deniability. Friendship doesn't require testing. Attraction does. Alpha Truths ultimately reframes inconsistent boundaries as information, not invitation. They don't mean you should chase harder. They mean you should observe more carefully. When you stay centered and consistent while she oscillates, the imbalance becomes visible to her. The selective closeness loses its power when it's no longer rewarded with increased investment. That's when the dynamic either stabilizes into true friendship or reveals deeper intent. Sign 3. Emotional priority and subtle possessiveness. When a woman genuinely sees you as just a friend, you are emotionally equal to other people in her life. You are appreciated, but you are not prioritized. Your presence is welcome, but not necessary. Alpha Truths begins by recognizing that priority is the clearest currency of attraction. People protect what they value. They invest in what matters. When she claims you are just a friend yet treats you as an emotional priority, the contradiction exposes her real feelings more loudly than any confession ever could. Emotional priority shows itself in how quickly you come to mind. She reaches out without a practical reason. She checks in not because something happened, but because silence feels wrong. These moments aren't driven by boredom. They're driven by emotional attachment. Friendship allows for gaps. Attraction resists them. When your absence creates a sense of imbalance for her, you've moved beyond the category she's verbally assigning. Emphasizes that emotional priority isn't about constant contact, it's about emotional relevance. You become the person she wants to share news with first, the one whose reaction she anticipates, the one whose opinion carries emotional weight. She may tell herself it's harmless, that it's just comfort or familiarity, but the nervous system doesn't prioritize neutrals. It prioritizes attachments. When you consistently occupy that space, the label starts to collapse under the weight of her own behavior. Subtle possessiveness often accompanies emotional priority. This possessiveness rarely appears as direct jealousy. Instead, it shows up as curiosity disguised as casual interest. She asks about your plans, your social life, or other women, in a way that seems light but carries emotional tension underneath. She may joke about competition or tease you about attention you receive. Alpha Truths reads this as emotional monitoring. Friendship doesn't require surveillance. Attraction does. Another sign of subtle possessiveness is emotional withdrawal when she feels threatened. If she senses that your attention is shifting elsewhere, her energy changes. She becomes colder, more distant, or suddenly busy. This isn't indifference, it's protection. Possessiveness isn't always about control. Sometimes it's about fear of loss. When she hasn't claimed you but still reacts to the idea of losing you, that reaction reveals internal attachment she hasn't fully acknowledged. Alpha Truths also notes that emotional priority shows itself during moments of decision. When she has choices, your needs quietly influence them. She adjusts plans, delays commitments, or rearranges time to keep the connection intact. She may not articulate why, even to herself, but behavior reveals motivation. People don't reorganize their lives for neutral connections. They do it for emotionally significant ones. Subtle possessiveness can also appear in how she frames other men to you. She may minimize them, criticize them, or present them as unimportant while emphasizing how understood she feels around you. This contrast is not accidental. It's emotional positioning. She's separating you from the rest without explicitly claiming you. Friendship doesn't require comparison. Attraction creates hierarchy. Alpha Truths highlights that possessiveness becomes most visible when you assert independence. When you don't chase, don't over-explain, and don't seek constant validation, her reactions become clearer. She may increase effort, ask more questions, or subtly attempt to reestablish emotional access. This isn't manipulation. It's attachment responding to perceived distance. Emotional priority resists being downgraded. Another layer of emotional priority is how she responds to your emotional state. She notices shifts in your mood quickly. She asks if something is wrong. She attempts to re-engage when she senses withdrawal. Friendship allows emotional awareness, but attraction heightens sensitivity. When she feels unsettled by your emotional distance, it indicates that your internal state matters to her stability. Alpha Truths teaches that men often misunderstand this dynamic by labeling it as mixed signals and reacting emotionally. The truth is simpler. She hasn't resolved the gap between what she feels and what she's ready to admit. Emotional priority fills the space where clarity should be. Possessiveness guards the connection, while the label keeps responsibility at bay. This isn't cruelty, it's conflict. The danger lies in overinvesting when you sense priority. Alpha Truths warns that priority without commitment is unstable. It benefits her emotional needs while leaving you undefined. The power move isn't to demand clarity, but to remain grounded in your own life. When emotional priority isn't reinforced by chasing, it forces alignment. Either the connection matures, or it rebalances into true friendship. Subtle possessiveness fades when it's not rewarded with compliance. If she reacts emotionally to your independence and you remain calm and consistent, the dynamic shifts. Emotional priority can't exist indefinitely without acknowledgement. It either grows into openness or dissolves under the weight of unmet tension. Alpha Truths doesn't chase outcomes. It observes patterns and allows truth to surface through behavior rather than pressure. When you stop focusing on what she says and start watching where she invests emotionally, the picture becomes clear. Emotional priority and subtle possessiveness are not accidents. They are unconscious confessions. They reveal attachment before language catches up, and once you learn to read them, the label of just a friend loses its power entirely. Here's the reality most men never take the time to see. Words are cheap, but actions are priceless. She can call you just a friend all she wants, but her behavior doesn't lie. Emotional pull, inconsistent boundaries, subtle possessiveness, these aren't coincidences. They are the footprints of her true feelings, written in ways that only those paying attention will notice. Most men make the mistake of believing the label instead of observing the patterns, and that's why they stay trapped in the friend zone, confused, frustrated, and unsure of what to do next. The truth is, understanding these signs isn't about convincing her of anything, nor is it about bending yourself to meet her unspoken expectations. It's about clarity, awareness, and positioning yourself in a way that honors your own value. When you learn to see the difference between what she says and what she does, you step out of the trap of uncertainty. You stop being someone she keeps on standby, someone she casually checks in with, and instead become someone whose presence matters deeply, whose absence she notices more than she's willing to admit. Emotional priority and subtle possessiveness aren't weaknesses. They are honest indicators of attachment and investment. The key is to recognize them without overreacting, without chasing, and without losing control of your own emotions. The moment you stay grounded, consistent, and self-respecting, you shift the dynamic. You no longer play by the rules of uncertainty she sets. You set your own rules by observing behavior, responding strategically, and maintaining your own standards. This isn't manipulation. This is awareness. This is understanding human nature on a level most men never reach. And when you combine that awareness with patience and self-confidence, the label of just a friend loses all its power. Her words will no longer dictate your reality. Her actions will. You begin to see the truth clearly. She may say one thing, but her mind, her energy, and her priorities are revealing something far deeper. At the end of the day, the power isn't in forcing feelings or seeking declarations. The power is in clarity, presence, and observation. It's in knowing when she is emotionally invested, when she seeks your attention, when she subtly prioritizes you over others, and when her protective words can no longer hide her true intentions. When you recognize these patterns, you act from a position of control, not need. You let her truth show itself naturally, while you maintain your own identity, your own boundaries, and your own value. So, pay attention to the small things. Notice the moments she leans in, the ways she prioritizes you without realizing it, and the subtle tension in her energy when you pull back. That is where the truth lives. That is where her feelings speak louder than words ever could. And when you understand this fully, you step into a world where labels don't confuse you, actions guide you, and the connection, whatever it becomes something real, authentic, and undeniable.